Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Tavares arrives. Tavares works back towards the blue line, headed to himself off the boards, back into the corner for Nyes. Nyes back of the net for Tavares. Tavares coming out, sends it in a goal. They score! They score! Holy Mackinaw, they score! Morgan Riley! Mo Riley! The Leafs have won it! They're going to the second round! Do you believe this? Holy Mackinaw!
One of the truly iconic calls by Joe Bowen in the opening round of the 2023 playoffs against Tampa Bay. The goal was actually credited in the end to John Tavares, but after 19 years of having not won a playoff series, could have been Joe Primo, Busher Jackson, Dave Keon, George Armstrong, or Darryl Sittler. It really didn't matter. Welcome to NHL Wraparound, Vic Morren, Neil Smith, and we are so looking forward to our interview coming up with the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen.
Yeah, being a Torontonian myself and having listened to Joe Bowen many nights, usually I was with the opposition. I wasn't with the cheering for the Leafs, but still his enthusiasm for the Toronto Maple Leafs is second to none. And also, though, it gives you a real indication of the fever pitch of fandom there is in Toronto for the Maple Leafs.
Before we get to that interview, three things you need to pay attention to. And speaking of fandom, Brad Marchand returned to Boston Tuesday night. Incredibly emotional for him. A great video tribute and just the adulation that was shown to him. Tears on the bench was longer than most players get.
Yes, and good on the Boston Bruins for doing that. He well-deserved, was on the only Stanley Cup team for the Boston Bruins in recent memory, and so much epitomized what it was to be a Boston Bruin. In some ways, it's sad that he didn't have his entire playing career with the Bruins because, he you look at him and his crooked nose and the whole thing, and a feisty guy and pushing up his elbow pads all the time on the bench. And this was the Bruins. This was what it was to be a Bruin. And it's really good that they did honor him the way they did.
There were no extracurriculars involving Marchand last night, but he made plenty of impact and showed up on the score sheet rather frequently. In the first 61 seconds of the game, he had a shot, drew a penalty, had a power play assist on the first Panthers goal. He had a hooking penalty in the second, and then an absolutely gorgeous backhand pass hitting Eetu Luostarinen in stride mid-third to put the Panthers ahead. The Bruins actually tied this game with the goalie pulled, that being Jeremy Swayman. But Carter Verhaeghe gets the game winner with 26 seconds left. He took a shot that went off the post and then caromed off the foot of Bruins defenseman Andrew Peeke. So a really memorable night at TD Garden.
And one that Brad Marchand will always have in his memory as a great night for him and well-deserved by him.
Second item, the last two number one overall picks in the NHL draft faced off at UBS Arena in a game that you were at last night. Macklin Celebrini for the Sharks and Matthew Schaefer for the Isles. Schaefer, a goal, assist, 2 points, first star, and he tied Marek Zidlicki for the longest point streak from the start of a career by a defenseman. You never thought Zidlicki was going to make this show, did you?
No, I never did think that, but good for him. And I got to tell you, Schaefer is the real deal. He is He's all over the ice. He loves to go on the offense. But the smile on his face when he scored the goal against the Sharks was it said it all, how happy he is and how much he loves to play.
And it's so heartwarming also because he's playing with that heavy heart following the loss of his mom. And it's just great to see. And for the Islanders, there is some genuine hope here because, like you said, you notice him every shift he's on the ice.
Yeah, you do. And, one thing, I don't know if you've thought of this, Vic, I did the other day was, isn't it amazing that we're getting these star defensemen wearing number 48?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a number of them in the league. Obviously, Lane Hudson in Montreal wears number 48, but there's several others. And it's just, I think it's more serendipity than anything. But, that's the new thing. Maybe we'll be seeing, instead of Bobby Orr's number 4, we'll be seeing Hudson and Schaefer's number 48.
Well, that's because all of the low numbers are getting retired. So there's no choice now, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Hey, before we get off of that particular game, thoughts on Celebrini, who scored goal to make it 4-3, wicked shot from the high slot.
Just great instincts. He did a couple of things in the game that didn't lead to goals, but that made my eyes pop. The way he could read, he had the puck and he turned and went right down the middle, saw that the defense, that the Islanders were splitting, and he got a scoring chance there. Just a great player. Will Smith was very impressive as well. And there's a lot of talent with the San Jose Sharks. The first period, they dominated over the Islanders. And had it not been for some pretty leaky goaltending on the San Jose end, they might have run away with this game.
Offensive talent is there. Defensive structure, still waiting for that to come around. And, of course, if your goaltending isn't good, then none of that's going to matter.
Absolutely.
Item number 3. The Utah Mammoth are 4-0-0 at home following a 4-3 overtime win over the Colorado Avalanche, who do remain without a regulation loss. Game-winning goal by your breakout player.
I told you, I paid attention to Dylan Guenther. He can shoot the puck. The Edmonton native is a goal scorer, and the thing that people might not remember about the Utah Hockey Club last year, they struggled at home. We talked about it many times that they, for whatever reason, in Salt Lake, they weren't playing well. They had a very poor home record. So this year to start off 4-0-0, I mean, maybe it's the woolly mammoth.
I picked them to get in this year, and the record that you're speaking of a season ago is they were over 500 in NHL 500 math. But the truth is they left so many points on the table at home at the Delta Center after January. And that's really where they lost the possibility of making the playoffs last spring.
Yeah, it is. It's the home cooking. They didn't do it well enough last year, but they're off to a great start this year. And it's really good for the fans in Salt Lake. Second year of having Major League Hockey there. Hopefully the bug will get into a lot of young people, and this is a takeoff point.
And that'll be 3 things you need to pay attention to. And now, let's welcome in Joe Bowen.
Well, it certainly is a pleasure to have on NHL Wraparound the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and a voice that I know personally really, really well and listened to many, many times, even though for 7 of the years I was listening, I was with the rival Detroit Red Wings. And that's Joe Bowen, the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs on radio for many decades. Joe, thanks for doing this with us. And it really is a privilege and a pleasure to have you do this.
Well, Neil, we've crossed paths many, many, many times throughout the course of your career and mine. So, yeah, it's fun to do these things. We're enjoying our last trip around the sun. This is the last year that we'll do it, and looking forward to it. And maybe, just maybe, since Vladimir Guerrero wore a Auston Matthews jersey in for Game 7, that we have exercised our own Game 7 miseries that have gone on here for a couple of years. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, it's I know we're all wondering, and I thought to myself about New York, and it didn't happen in New York, which is a real baseball town. But do you think that this eve of, now that we're on the eve of the Blue Jays being back in the World Series for the first time since 1993, does that put more pressure on the Leafs and their 1967 woes, or does it really not matter?
I don't think you can put any more pressure on them. I really don't. I mean, it's there. I don't think you can grab a shovel and heap a little more over the top on it. They understand that. It is what it is. You have to fight through it. You have to have some dominating personalities. And, Guerrero has certainly showed that he's put them on his shoulders and is enjoying the extra pressure. That takes a wonderful athlete. And you know as well as I do, Mark Messier was exactly the right person at the right time to be there to get 1940 off everybody's minds as well. So the Leafs are hoping that Auston Matthews is of similar character. And it is kind of interesting because of the connection. Auston Matthews wears number 34. His parents are American and Mexican. His mother has nicknamed him Pappy. He wears 34 because Big Pappy from the Boston Red Sox, another unique player who exercised an even longer drought. And that is the connection that they have with Guerrero, who, of course, is Dominican, and Yankees lose was part of the whole part of what was going on here. And so sports is such a wonderful thing, how things can kind of revolve around, and then all of a sudden you see the clarity of what is going on, and you hope, as far as Leaf fans are concerned, that maybe this is an omen. So we'll wait and see.
Joe, you never called a game with Mike Walton, did you, for the Leafs?
No, but I know Shaky quite well. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
yes,
well, the man,
a wonderful individual.
The number 16 that the modern day fans are more familiar with. For the first time, you're not calling his name in 10 years, and he's gone over to Vegas. And is that? What does that feel like without? And I know what Marner meant to the team, but I mean, for you called a lot of great games for Mitch Marner.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's the nature of the business, right? And Mitch Marner, rightly or wrongly, felt that he was sort of the whipping boy, I think, under the circumstances here. I don't know if he got any more of attention than any of the others. But unfortunately, because they came up all at the same time, the so-called Core Four, and it wasn't the Toronto Maple Leafs, it was the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Core Four. And the Core Four took the heat, where in reality, it should be the entire group. And I think that Mitch felt that was being a little more heaped on him, and it was his right to let the contract go and to make the decision to move elsewhere. I am quite happy that quote unquote Core Four is not part of the lexicon around here anymore. It is the Leafs, and the leadership group is there. You have Matthews, you have Tavares, you have Nylander, obviously the star players, but it's the Toronto Maple Leafs and not the Core Four that we're talking about ad nauseum. So, he will be missed. I mean, he's a tremendous player, but you find other ways to orchestrate offense. You find other ways to do things. If you give up one less goal a game, all of a sudden that 100 points doesn't seem to be such a large hill to try and find. So they're kind of trying to find their way a little bit currently. But the Marner situation is gone.
Yeah. You know, Joe, I find it amazing, and being a Torontonian and understanding what hockey means to Toronto and to Canadians, but especially in Toronto with the MTHL and all the rest of the stuff that we all go through when we're young. I just found it, and I mentioned this to many people. You've got two Torontonians with opposite mindsets. You've got John Tavares, who just loves to be a Leaf and takes a pay cut to be a Leaf and stays with the Leafs and not interested in going anywhere, even though he's got hometown pressure too. And then you've got Mitch Marner, who runs from that pressure and wants to get as far away as he can from his own hometown. And I just find that so interesting. You know, for so many years, I had to listen to Don Cherry criticizing the Maple Leafs for not having Toronto kids on the team, not having enough Canadians and not having enough Torontonians. They started to get some Torontonians. To me, it started with Kadri, but I might be wrong. It might have started somewhere else. And they've gotten many of them since then. And I thought, well, this is great. You know, Marner's right from Toronto and so on. But I really admire Tavares and his attitude right from the whole time, the way he's handled. And I don't know John, but I do admire him for the way he's handled the Toronto situation.
Well, and you can add Scott Laughton, and you could add Steven Lorenz that have come home and are loving it. I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs treat their players as well, if not better, than anyone else in the National Hockey League. How you handle the quote-unquote white noise and the pressure of the media and things of that nature is up to you. And some people relish in it. Some people ignore it. And some people may find it oppressive. And that was the situation, I'm sure, with Mitch Marner and his group that influences him. And I think that group, too, was also part and parcel of all of this going forward. So having said that, the guys who are here, and John Tavares is an amazing young man, not that young anymore, but understands the market, understands the history, understands what it would mean to end the streak since 1967 by doing it in your hometown. I've often said, Neil, that Vic, that if they do win, and they will at some point, the parade starts in Timmins, right? It starts in Timmins, and it weaves its way through down. We make a fast trip over to Sudbury just so I can say hello. And then we come all the way back down Highway 11 and all the way down through Ontario. And you know what? They would line the road. If the Stanley Cup was being paraded, they would line the road. That's the kind of fandom that there is. And it's like my family and my boys. We're huge Notre Dame football fans. We own the Green Bay Packers. We each have a share, which I consider myself to be then the majority owner because I control those 5 shares. So I just sidebar, I had to phone Jerry Jones to get the Michael Parsons deal done. Anyway, but it is you yell and scream at them. You get upset with them. You hate them. But the next day, you're back in a love affair again, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, because I know you did don the pads in your early days, I got to ask you about the current Leaf.
Played till last year.
Oh, okay.
73. I got through that, and then I'm flopping around like a dead seal in the crease, and then 2 of the old coots that I'd be playing with would run into one another, and they would fall down, and we'd stop the game. We have to go over and help them up, dust them off. Just a minute. I'm down here flopping around like a dead seal. No one's coming around to help me up. I said, the hell with that. I'm going to try to save my hips.
That is hilarious. Well, you got a little bit of drama going on in Toronto with Stolarz and last night's game. Tell me about that, because that's, you know, we try to cover the whole league, and then we find out that Stolarz has said something in Toronto that's upset everybody, but now he's got to play goal the next night, and he better come through for the Leafs.
Jimmy Ralph had a great line last night talking about this. He said, and it's very true. You can't go in the dressing room and stand up on a soapbox and say things unless you're going good. If you're in a 23-game scoring slump and you jump up there and tell everybody what the hell to do, they're going to look at you and say, yeah, right, take a hike, sit down. We'll see if we can't straighten this out, right? So leadership is a different situation. He got bowled over pretty good, and obviously a key part of last year's playoff was the quote-unquote inadvertent elbow that he took to the head that got him out when he was playing so well. As a group, the Leafs aren't playing very well right now. They look slow because they're not moving the puck well, and Stolarz is taking the brunt of that because they're being outshot. And when he did get run over, I think it was just some frustration that was there that maybe needed to be said as well. But that once it's done, and you try to move on from that point.
So you've already mentioned that you're a goalie, so of course there's something that you've got in common with Stolarz. But let's now spin the Wayback Machine on, because you played for a high school hockey champion in Sudbury in 1967. You graduated from the University of Windsor. You became the voice of the Sudbury Wolves and then joined the Nova Scotia Voyageurs before becoming the voice of the Leafs. So can you share the series of events that led you to becoming the voice of the Maple Leafs in 1982?
Well, I was a goaltender of not real good repute. My dream was to replace Johnny Bauer between the pipes of the Maple Leafs, and that quickly became a situation that wasn't going to happen. But I enjoyed doing play-by-play in my driveway and on the street playing road hockey and whatnot. And I thought that it might be an opportunity. My dad passed away when I was just 14, and he wanted me to get an education and make sure that it was a university education. So the University of Windsor had a communication arts program, and I got involved with the student radio station there and did mostly basketball because we had a great basketball program under Dr. Paul Thomas. So the biggest break that I got was my dad's best friend growing up was Bill Plant, and he was the owner of the TV and radio station in Sudbury, but he was also part owner of the Sudbury Wolves. So when I graduated, I got a job in the promotions department at the station. I got involved in doing some of the sports. And when the opening arrived that they needed a play-by-play man, I walked down the hall and asked to at least be able to put in my resume. And Mr. Plant said, "No, I've heard you. Go ahead." And so that's sort of where the broadcasting career started. I got out to Halifax for 3 years with the Nova Scotia Voyageurs and rode the bus with John Brophy, which was a very big piece of education. And then in 1982, got a phone call from Len Bramson and got the opportunity to come here to Toronto.
We all know that your signature saying is Holy Mackinaw. And
sorry, Vic, it's copywritten. That's $25, and I accept cash and or check. So after this is done, I expect something to be thrown in the mail.
I'll Venmo.
Perfect.
Done. But we had learned that it was actually your father who had the term, and it was, I guess, from him to use something else instead of swearing. But where did he get that from?
You know what? I wish I could tell you. I never thought about asking him. As I say, he passed away when I was 14.
Yeah.
I never used it in junior hockey. I never used it in the American Hockey League. And I was about 5 or 6 years into the NHL. Bill Waters was doing color with me. We were in the Chicago Stadium, and Felix Potvin made a great save. And for some ungodly reason, out of the recesses of my mind, I blurted it. And I would never have used it again, except I looked over at Wilbur, and he'd fallen off his chair. He was laughing so hard. I thought, well, if I got that rise out of him, maybe I'll use it again. And so we did, and we've used it for some good as opposed to just what I do, the nonsense that I do. My third oldest son, Sean, had leukemia when he was a year old. He's now a big, strapping 35-year-old and doing very, very well. Works for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, actually. And so we've sold Holy Mackinaw T-shirts for leukemia research and various other things. So that's where that came from. And I don't know. I mean, you remember Jamie Farr, Holy Toledo on MASH? And I think it was just an effort by those back in the 1950s and 60s to refrain from other deleted expletives when they had a youngster in the room and whatnot.
Well, maybe those $25 that I was going to send to you, I can get one of those T-shirts then.
There you go. Yeah, and we'll donate it to leukemia research. How's that?
Perfect. So your first game, October the 6th, 1982, in Chicago Stadium, a 3-3 tie with the Blackhawks. What do you remember about that night?
I remember getting in a cab with the biggest man I'd ever seen in my life. And we started down West Madison Street. Neil, you know what that was like. Yeah. It was the worst part of town for Chicago. Yep. And I thought to myself, oh, God, I'm going on my last ride and I'm never going to get to do even one game. And then the mausoleum of the stadium came into view and I thought, oh, thank God. So I get in there. I went very early, nervous as hell, as you can imagine. Yeah. I had scripted out exactly what I wanted to say. I'm replacing Ron Hewitt. And here's this young kid from Sudbury that's going to start his NHL career. And the engineer who was in the booth, who was trying to get us on the air, could not make the connection. It was a bell. You had to use telephone lines at that point. Yeah. And we couldn't get on the air. So our post-game show was non-existent. And literally, as the referee was dropping the puck, he points at me and go. So everything I had prepared, that went out the window. And it was, and off we went. So I don't, you know what? And I don't have a copy of that. I don't know why I don't. It probably was on cassette tape somewhere, but in a few moves, I don't have it. But I'm sure it must have sounded like and off you went. But Wally put up and he scored a couple of goals and we tied it up 3-3.
Salming actually had the tying goal after the two Podubny goals. So great.
Joe, speaking of buildings, famous buildings, and I love Chicago Stadium. I did when I was a kid, when I would listen to the radio of the Blackhawks game. They were my favorite team at one point, with Holland, Makita, and Warham, and Pierre Palat, and Tony O.
Glenn Hall.
It was a fabulous days, and the uniforms and the whole bit. But you've done games for the Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously in the historic Maple Leaf Gardens, and then moved over to the Air Canada Centre, now called the Scotiabank Arena. And can you take us through what it's like calling a game in the two different venues? Because I can't imagine there's any comparison between Maple Leaf Gardens and Air Canada Centre.
Well, no. I remember in the 92-93 playoff run, we're playing in May, and it's 93 degrees outside and probably 104 inside at the Gardens. There was no air conditioning. And somebody would open a window to get a breath of air, and the water and it would just condense on the floor. People were falling down the stairs because of all of the mayhem that was going on. I can't imagine what the ice was like, but the view was great. We were closer to the rink. It was a marvelous spot. I got to do one game when I was doing junior hockey in the old gondola that Harold ended up tearing down to put some private boxes in and put it in the furnaces at the Gardens, and it should have been relocated at the Hockey Hall of Fame somewhere. But the view was great. All of the new arenas try to accommodate the press, but you're further back from the play, makes it a little more difficult. I'm absolutely stunned when we did get to travel a number of years ago when they opened the new rink in Edmonton, the press box for broadcasters was an afterthought. I mean, you're in another area code somewhere, so it makes it extraordinarily difficult to do it as well. So, but being in the different rinks, I did games in the Spectrum. I was in every original 6 arena, although I didn't do a game in the Olympia. I went to see games in the Olympia when I was going to university in Windsor, but they were all special spots. They really were. I got a beer dumped on my head at the old Boston Garden because we were almost sitting in the stands, and I guess I was a little over exuberant with a Leaf goal, and some patron decided that I should have a shower. But they were great buildings. The stadium in Chicago was my favorite because we were in a box that was suspended from the ceiling with a tire iron or whatever it was. But when the roar got going, that thing was like a tuning fork. And you kept looking up to making sure the bolts were holding, that this wasn't coming down. But it was a very, very special spot. I dearly loved the old stadium.
Were you with us, Joe, in London in 1993 in Wembley?
The prestigious French's Mustard Cup?
Yes.
Where the hell is that?
Well,
what did you do with it? You stole it from us.
I've got it. I've got it at home, and I've also got.
Don't tell me you have that.
The French's Mustard Cup.
Oh, yes. Oh, that was, I got to tell you this story, Neil. This is one of my favorite stories. So when we get over there, Gordy Stellick is doing color with me. And we get there, and the engineer that we've made arrangements with to get us on the air with his equipment is from the BBC, of course. And he comes up to us and he says in the press room, I don't know where you want to do your commentary from, so I've put you behind the Toronto bench. So we were in the first row behind the Leaf bench, and we're passing notes to Pat Burns, telling him what line combination we thought would be really good and everything else. So anyway, at the end of the first period, Gordy's doing an interview with somebody, and I'm just kind of standing in one of the aisleways. And this young man comes up to me from London, and as only the Brits could, he says to me, "Excuse me, it's my first game. Is it a good one?" and I said, "Well, it's an exhibition game, but yeah, it's not bad. It's a pretty good game." I one of the greatest questions I've ever been asked.
What is the best Maple Leaf team that you were during your entire career? Not the best statistically, but your favorite team from your career.
It would be the 92, 93 team. It was really the watershed mark. The Ballard era there was no chance. You knew that you weren't going to get the kind of support from ownership that other teams were getting, whether it would be coaching, whether it was amenities for the players, whether it was going out and making trades, whether it was paying salaries and anything else. But Nicky Borashevsky's goal in Detroit turned the corner. And then those guys on that team played 21 playoff games in 42 nights. And Doug Gilmour put them on his shoulders, and probably from 180 pounds was probably 150 pounds by the time everything was over and done. And of course, it is still a part of Maple Leaf history, the high stick that was not called and allowed Wayne Gretzky to stay in the game and score in overtime in Game 6 to send it back to Game 7. And then that SOB had the greatest game in his career, he said, and ended up beating the Leafs in Game 7. So I would think that team, Neil, would probably be the one. Some of Pat Quinn's teams with Matt Sundin and others that that were very successful but didn't quite get the job done. But that 92-93 team turned the corner. It made sure, and everybody realized that ownership was not going to try to derail things. They were going to be supportive. Now, it hasn't worked out, but it hasn't been for the lack of effort, the lack of money, the lack of trying.
Joe, I just realized one thing as you're speaking. I got to get this in. I really believe, after listening to you and being from Toronto and going through the Harold Ballard days, I really believe that's the reason I recognize right away who has no hope in the league because of ownership. Because when I look around the league today or yesterday or the year before, I always say they're never going to win with that ownership. They will never win because everything starts at the very, very top. And if you don't have good leadership at the very, very top, you will never really win. It just doesn't happen. And I just realized now that probably I grew up understanding that because we all went through the Harold Ballard days and we all knew what you just said, which was you knew you had no hope.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, the other thing too, and I think it's a small thing, and the Leafs are under a corporation. Rogers now owns it, all of that. But we're seeing with the Blue Jays, you know, a marvelous run that was completely unexpected, I think, at the start of the year. But they are still being allowed to do what they have to do. Their payroll is not reflective of the market. It's bigger. And I think we have the league, obviously, in the day and time now when there is a salary cap. But if you go back to the Pat Quinn era when the cap wasn't there, and what they have, their efforts. I mean, Phil Housley coming here, Glenn Anderson coming here, getting Doug Gilmour to come back, and then having that awful experience of him just being able to play a period or so before his knee was blown out. We got cheated of a marvelous night that didn't happen because Dougie didn't come back in a Leaf uniform. Phil Housley and other players that were all brought in to try to make the push go, and it just hasn't happened as yet. So I agree with you completely on that, Neil. Absolutely.
Joe, you've seen so much in 44 seasons with the club, and you were talking about Gilmour before, and in that 93 run, that absolutely insane move, the spinorama behind the net to beat Curtis Joseph was probably one of the most memorable goals that we have ever seen. And there's been so much heartbreak with this club, with all of the Game 7 losses, and of course, 93 and 94 getting to the conference finals. But as you continue this season, which will be your last, you're going to be honored on December 16th in a game against the Chicago Blackhawks, which, as we said, was the first game that you did back in 1982. And it's kind of ironic also that your partner in the booth, Jim Ralph, was drafted by the Hawks as a goaltender in 1980.
And do you know he was at that game that I did? He hadn't been shipped off to one of the American Hockey League spots that he has been to a number of. He was up in the organ loft at the end of the rink watching the game. We didn't know each other at the time. So I've been blessed with the people that I've had a chance to work with. And we were talking before the show, Brad Selwood did color with me. Vic Hadfield did color with me in the first couple of seasons that I was there. Bill Waters, Harry Neal, all kinds. I even had Scotty Bowman do some games with me when I was doing TV back in the 90s. And then Ralphie has been a very big part of it as well. So, it's very special to have those kinds of people. I'm looking forward to the event on the 16th, and Chicago's in town. And for a sidebar story to that, because Nick Foligno, if I do have to make a ceremonial face-off, will be in the circle along with Auston Matthews. I've known the Folignos since Sudbury. Michael was on the junior team for 4 years when I first started broadcasting the Sudbury Wolves games. So I've known the Folignos forever. Just an unbelievable family. I'm so happy that his young daughter, who has gone through some hard issues right from birth, has successfully gone through another procedure to ensure that everything is going well. We got Nicky here for a playoff run, and he got hurt, and it just wasn't to be. But not for the lack of trying anyway. They're a wonderful family.
You're going to call your 3,800th game sometime in January.
Don't say it like that, Neil. That sounds like I'm really old, Vic. I mean, come on.
Oh, then I'm going to piss you off even more, because I was going to say that if it wasn't for the pandemic and maybe some longer Leaf playoff runs, you'd be pushing 4,000. But I'd like to ask you, of all of the games that you have called, is there one call in particular that just stands out and say, you know what, when I reflect on my career, this is the favorite one that I've ever called?
Hasn't happened yet. This year. This is the year. This is the one. This is the one at the end. I've said that all along. I don't know if you want me to reflect on my favorite call that I have made. The Nicky Borashevsky goal, the Battle of Ontario, where the Leafs were hanging on by their thumbs. Alex McGillney is throwing his body in front of pucks, blocking shots. It was the Bless You Boys call that I made. Matt Sundin scoring to send the game to overtime against Carolina in the playoffs. Auston Matthews' debut in the National Hockey League. And a quick story about that, if I have time with you. We're in Ottawa, and because the new general manager, late of the New Jersey Devils and whatever, who did not allow press to travel on the charters, we had to stay over. So Ralphie and I go back to the Brook Street Hotel where the team would stay and take a flight out the next morning. And as we get into the bar, the Matthews family is there, Austin's parents. We got to meet them. There's some wonderful, wonderful people. And I phoned the radio station and asked them to email me the 4 goals that we had called on Austin. And we played them for them at the bar. And the 2 of them were weeping. And it was such a special moment. So those 4 goals, too, mean a great deal to me as well.
Have you ever taken the time to reflect on your contribution to Canadian culture by really representing the pulse of the Leafs for 4.5 decades? Has that ever set in for you of what you mean to so many people?
It's. I think after announcing that I was retiring, I've gotten letters, I've gotten emails, and from people who I don't know, who have found a way to get in touch. And they have sent me things that really touch me. One in particular, young man who said that he grew up with me going to minor hockey games in the Greater Toronto Hockey League or around the province, and his dad was dying, and he was in palliative care, and he would bring the radio up, and his dad wanted to listen to me even while the game was on television, and that they there on his last evening listened, and they laughed, and they talked, and they reminisced about the car rides, about the minor hockey tournaments, young men that never went on to play at any great level. But they enjoyed what we did, and they laughed because, Jim Ralph and I laugh. we realize that they're not all Rembrandts. There are a lot of Picassos that are being played on a nightly basis. And Jimmy's got such a wonderful sense of humor, as did Harry Neal and Bill Waters, that if you don't entertain the people for the 2.5 hours, they're going to tune you out as soon as things don't go maybe the right way. But lots of times, let's just listen to these two idiots because they're going to say something stupid sooner or later. We're all going to get a chuckle out of it. And that was, it really touched me. And it was, and I've had numerous calls and numerous contacts with similar kind of stories. And Stephen Lorenz, when he arrived, and Scotty Lawton said, "Boy, I can still hear you in the car on my way home from hockey or whatever, making sure Dad wanted to make sure what the score was and laughing or having fun with it and enjoying your calls." And that means a great deal.
Joe, being a Toronto kid, I always wondered from time to time why you didn't become the TV guy, because sometimes that is the natural progression, is that somebody does radio, and then when the TV guy leaves, the radio guy becomes the TV guy. That just happened in St. Louis with my buddy John Kelly, who's now in LA. They ended up pushing the radio guy up to do the TV play-by-play. But I wanted to ask you about that. But I also wanted to say, as I was listening to you talk, and I've got my own thoughts on it, is that the actual term play-by-play was meant for radio, because in doing radio, you must describe to the listener what is going on to make them feel in their imagination that they're watching the game in their mind, and that it is so much more of a skill set to be able to do that than the TV guy who has the video portion being shown to the audience as well as his voice. And he doesn't need to be as descriptive. He shouldn't be as descriptive in my mind. But the radio guy is really the skill guy who says, look, we're going left to right this period. We've got the Maple Leafs have got on their home whites. Chicago has on their road red. This is back in the old days. The Leafs are sitting across from us or whatever. And you're describing the whole thing. And in the listener's mind, he's watching the game. But he's just not watching it on TV. He's watching it on his mind.
You try to, Neil, and you're right. In radio, you've got to be more descriptive. My son David is doing play-by-play as he completes his academic stuff and sports administration at Laurentian up in Sudbury. So it's kind of following in the footsteps. And we'll have chats afterwards. And I will say to him, if you're doing radio, you want left, right, back, behind the net, right wing corner, things that you need to add so that you can, maybe the listener can literally close his eyes and kind of visualize the game coming at him. And I've often said that and I did do TV for a number of years, it allows you to do less when you do TV. It allows you to do less. And so you're probably not making as many identifiable mistakes because the game is so quick, because sometimes you don't have to. You can wait, right? You wait and catch the number and make sure you have it. So radio, you try to, at least in my mind, do exactly what you say. Paint the picture, let people enjoy it, but also have some fun with it too.
Well, even the fact that you guys, or all of us, I mean, I did a little bit of TV, but you will use words like it goes into the far corner and it's on the near side and it goes down the near boards. And what that is just trying to give the person the illusion that they're watching the game, because in their mind they are. I had a friend who's a huge Yankees fan who said to me that his grandfather would not allow them to turn the TV on to watch the Yankee game, but they must listen to it on the radio only, because then you use your mind and not just be lazy and watch something on TV.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, that's a wonderful way to put it. Absolutely.
Well, we really appreciate you doing this, Joe. I personally appreciate your voice and your call and listening to you over the years. For me, what stands out is our years when I was in Detroit with Jimmy D, and Toronto and Detroit had a huge rivalry at that point. We were both trying to develop our organizations from the Dead Things and the Ballard Maple Leafs up a little bit. And Stevie Yzerman was young, and we were getting into those playoff battles. And those to me were the good old days. Those were even better days than my New York days, because they were more innocent back then than in the 90s.
Those games were wars. They really were. And then Wendell arrives and Bob McGill arrives. And I mean, even the exhibition games took about 8 hours to play because they were just filled with fights and everything else. The game's changed a lot. I don't know if it's for the better, but it's probably safer anyway, because there was an awful lot of head pounding going on in those days for sure, Neil.
There sure was. But Joe, thanks for doing this. Thanks for coming on here. Hopefully we can get you to come on again, because I know Vic and I are both entertained by you and by these conversations. So thanks again, and God bless you, and good luck on the 16th of December. I wish I could be there. I'm sure it's going to be a really fun night.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be memorable for sure. We're looking forward to it. Thanks very much, guys. Anytime.
Thank you, Joe. And we hope you get that special call next spring.
Attaboy, Vic. Keep plugging it.
It's really a shame that there was very little enthusiasm during our interview with Joe Bowen. But I got to tell you something. It really made you a Toronto kid all over again.
It did, because there's, you always go back to your roots, and Joe Bowen is the Leafs announcer, and I'm a Toronto kid and went to Maple Leaf Gardens a million times. And my mother followed every single Maple Leafs game. And there's a lot there. Once you get talking Toronto hockey, there's a lot there. And that was really fun, really cathartic. And I hope everybody out there enjoyed it as much as we did.
I got such a kick out of listening to the stories about not only Harold Ballard, but some of his calls, and even the reference to David Ortiz, Big Papi, and the number 34, and how Auston Matthews ended up with that number. And this was just a lot of fun for a guy who has been, as I said in the last question that I asked him, he is a piece of that fiber. He is a piece of that culture in Toronto, and that will live forever.
And you never realize it as much when it's inside of you as the people on the outside understand it. And I thought that was great, the way that you sort of made him stop and say, yeah, okay, I guess I am. I thought that was really good.
Well, thank you. Blind squirrel finding the nut every so often. Let's hit a couple of quick injury updates for the Maple Leafs. Defenseman Chris Tanev left Tuesday's game against New Jersey late in the second period with an upper body injury. According to head coach Craig Berube, it is possible he may miss some time. And for the LA Kings, Corey Perry played his first game of the season, one shot in 14:41 of playing time in a 2-1 overtime win, a big win for the Kings against the St. Louis Blues. Other news, Sidney Crosby on Tuesday evening in the Penguins' 5-1 win over the Vancouver Canucks established a new team record for combined regular season and playoff points with 1,896, surpassing Mario Lemieux. The point came on a goal early in the second period. Neil, we're getting into a place with Crosby where he is now entering the true pantheon of greatness with the numbers that he has put up throughout his career.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. And because the Penguins are a struggling team right now during this last few years, and will be for the rest of this year. He goes less noticed than the McDavids and the Dreisaitl's and that. But Sidney Crosby, make no mistake about it, is still a superstar in the NHL.
Also of note in that game, defenseman Chris Letang picked up his 600th career assist. And even though the bar is low for the Penguins, they are holding firm in the first month of the season. And you need guys to perform that really you don't expect offense from. Justin Brazeau, first career 3-point game, 5 goals and 8 points in 7 games this season. So good on him, because he had never put up big numbers in Boston, and he's finding a little bit of opportunity in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he's finding it in the black and gold, but not of the Boston Bruins, of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Well played. We'll be talking about uniforms in a couple of minutes. Connor McDavid will not go scoreless this season. He scored his first of the season in Ottawa on Tuesday, and then he and Leon Draisaitl set up the 2025 Hobey Baker Award winner, Isaac Howard, for his first career goal. It's also his first career point. The Oilers were up 2-0 in the third period, got tied by the Senators, but they win it in OT on a power play wire shot by Jake Wallman, who's fresh off IR. So the Oilers didn't have a great road trip. They did win the opener at Madison Square Garden, lost 3 straight, but then this was a big win for them to finish it in Ottawa on Tuesday.
Yeah, to fly home on a positive note from Ottawa to Edmonton, Alberta last night is a big deal for the Oilers, because things just were not going right for them for a good stretch.
Remember that Olympic send-off event that was going to take place at UBS Arena in early February?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You know, you can keep looking, but you're not going to find it, because that event has been canceled. First reported by Emily Kaplan on ESPN last night. The UBS Arena will now host the 2027 All-Star Game, skills competition, all the other festivities in the first week of February in, as I mentioned, 2027. So that will now buy us a year before our first live stream.
There we go. And we get time to tune it up a little bit.
Well, I don't even know what we're tuning yet, but nonetheless, we look forward to working that event in about 16 or so months from now. So we were talking uniforms. We all love uniforms. We all have our favorites. And I think most of us that grew up watching hockey in the 60s probably gravitate towards those of the original 6. But let's talk about the clubs that came in 1979 after the WHA clubs, 4 of them, Edmonton, Quebec, Hartford, and Winnipeg, were annexed by the National Hockey League. The Colorado Avalanche, formerly Quebec Nordiques, will wear the Nordiques uniform in their next home game, that being Thursday against the Carolina Hurricanes, formerly the Hartford Whalers, and the Canes will don the green and white of Hartford. So the Avs will wear their uniform 7 times this season, including the next time they and the Canes meet in Carolina on January 3rd. So I think for so many people, the color scheme, the stylized end with the hockey stick, and the logo itself making out an igloo, it's one of the great uniforms, the fleur-de-lis. I mean, you could go on and on with that uniform. It's a favorite of many.
It is. And I got to tell you, though, the uniform that was closest to you in your days of being in Connecticut, and that being the Hartford Whalers, I think that their logo is one of the most well thought out, unique logos ever. The way that the whale tail is the W, and within that is the H of Hartford. And I think that that's a great logo as well.
You know, I grew up in Northern Jersey.
I do.
Minus the whale tail, that was actually the same logo that was used by the Hackensack Water Company.
Oh, that's a good one. I'll remember that. Hackensack Water Company.
That's right. Well, much like Marek Zidlicki at the start of the show, I didn't think the Hackensack Water Company thought they'd be mentioned on this podcast either, but here we are.
Yeah, well, everybody gets a little bit of a shout out on NHL Wraparound.
With that, we'll close our show for today. Many thanks to the legendary voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen, for appearing with us today.
And many, many, many thanks to all the listeners out there, the people that are watching on YouTube. Reach us individually if you'd like to at Neil at NHLWraparound.com or Vic at NHLWraparound.com. On all podcast platforms is NHL Wraparound, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and our complete catalog of all of these marvelous pieces of work that we've done on NHL Wraparound can be found on our website, which, of course, is called NHLWraparound.com.
Also, exclusive content there. Latest column, New York centric, written by Patrick Hoffman. We have Neil's Nuggets, where he just gives a little bit of perspective with some statistical info in his installment on Tuesday. And then Smith's Picks, which was rolling prior to Tuesday night. And then you went 1, 2, and 2. You're not feeling well?
I was sick last night when I was seeing the results come through. Teams that should have won easily lost. But there's always tonight. That's the great thing about sports. There's always more games coming. So what's my overall record, though, now?
Your overall record for the year is 39, 20, and 10. But I think your real goal is to get like 100 games over 500 by Thanksgiving.
Well, that is my goal. Because really, when I talk about NHL teams, this record would be 39 and 30. Okay, because 10 loser points and put onto the loser column would be 39 and 30. Still not bad. 9 games over 500 or 19 games over 500.
You know, I'm trying to make you feel better with the higher mark here. I mean, don't throw any cold water on this, you know.
Well, I just don't want to keep patting myself on the back. So look at NHLWraparound.com to get some great foresight into what is going to happen tonight.
By the time we get to short shifts on Friday, we'll see how good that foresight really was. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.